You're listening to the Monocle Daily, first broadcast on the 19th of August, 2025 on Monocle Radio.
Will Israel agree to this Gaza-ceasefire proposal? Is it time that UN peacekeepers in Lebanon folded their tents? And can the President of the United States be flattered into defending Europe? I'm Andrew Muller. The Monocle Daily starts now. Hello and welcome to the Monocle Daily, coming to you from our studios here at Midori House in London. I'm Andrew Muller. My guests Nomi Bar Yaakov and Renard Mansour will discuss the day's big stories, and we'll meet the London restaurateurs who made the apparently inexplicable decision to leave Leytonstone, where all sensible people live. Stay tuned, all that and more coming up right here on the Monocle Daily. This is the Monocle Daily. I'm Andrew Muller, and I am joined today by Nomi Bar Yaakov, international peace negotiator, expert in diplomacy, geopolitics and the Middle East, fellow at the Geneva Centre for Security Policy and former fellow at Chatham House, and by Renard Mansour, research fellow in the Middle East and North Africa programme and project director of the Iraq Initiative at Chatham House. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
Nomi, welcome to the Monocle Daily. Your first time here. Briefly introduce yourself, if you would, to the listeners.
So I'm Nomi Bar Yaakov, and as Andrew said, I'm an international peace negotiator. I'm a former speechwriter to the United Nations Secretary General from the time of Boutros Boutros-Ghali, and a troubleshooter negotiator across various continents. I am particularly interested in negotiations for peace and how to get there. I'm writing a book on that topic, and I look forward to being here today.
Well, we will be sorting out the Middle East and other trouble spots in due course. Seriously, people, strap yourselves in. We're going to have this all bagged by about 1835 UK. Renard, you are shortly off to Greece and then to the United States. The United States leg of the trip, possibly more germane to today's deliberations. What are you hoping to find out once you get there?
I think what everyone is trying to find out is who is making policy right now on the Middle East specifically, other than one or two individuals. So it's about mapping the different, parts of the government, who is in DOD, State Department, NSC, White House, and trying to understand if there is actually a strategy and a trajectory. We have a hypothesis, but we need to always test those hypotheses.
Can you let us in on what that hypothesis is?
We don't think there's much of a strategy yet.
May I add, I would concur with that.
And I think nobody requires either of your levels of expertise to have reached that conclusion. And on that happy note, we will start in Gaza, and with reports that Hamas have approved a ceasefire proposal pushed by Qatar and Egypt. It calls for a 60-day truce and the return by Hamas of 28 Israeli hostages, 10 alive, 18 not, while Israel releases more than 200 Palestinian prisoners. A response from Israel is due within the next 48 hours, but advance reports have it that Israel is going to insist on the release of all remaining hostages held since October 7th, 2023, alive and dead, believed to be 50 in total. Nomi, first of all, this very much your area of expertise, obviously. Interestingly, Qatar is saying this proposal is not actually all that much different from the one pitched by the US envoy Steve Witkoff back in May. So why might Hamas be more amenable now?
Well, it is in their. First of all, I think Hamas are counting on the fact that Israel is going to reject the offer, because it's pretty clear that Israel will not agree to any ceasefire that entails an end of war and a full withdrawal from Gaza. It's also clear that US President Donald Trump has so far backed Israel's invasion of Gaza City, where there are over 1 million multiple times displaced Palestinians, and they've already started rolling tanks, the Israeli army, into Gaza City. So I think this is, as you said correctly, this is a trajectory, this is a ceasefire proposal that is originally an American one that Israel has agreed to, but Israel has always found an excuse not to agree to a proposal once it's actually sort of put on the table and once Hamas have agreed to it.
Hey, Renard, as Nomi foreshadows there, is that the fundamental problem that all such ceasefire proposals are going to run up against, that Benjamin Netanyahu simply has no interest in stopping because in his own narrow interests there is no upside to doing that?
Yeah, the academic term mutually hurting stalemate is not there right now. From the perspective of Benjamin Netanyahu, this war is really, as many say, the reason he's still in office. And so the war is, for him, a legitimizing factor. And so prolonging it is very important for him. And although he has faced significant international criticism, you've heard many different countries, states, the UK, other countries saying we will now recognize a Palestinian state potentially. October 7th was such, a humiliation for him that it's clear he's not done with his revenge.
Nomi, but I think we have to acknowledge the possibility that Benjamin Netanyahu may not be thinking all that clearly. People who have been in power as long as he has do tend to get to a point where they struggle to see the wood from the trees. But especially in light of recent developments, both internal and external, that pressure even from Israel's allies that Renard alludes to, those huge protests we saw in Israel over the weekend, he can't possibly think, sure, I can do this forever.
No, I mean, the protest not just over the weekend. Today, the main road between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv was blocked, and many arrests were made again, and water cannons are being used. So I think we're seeing daily protests, and I think that, that we have turned a corner in terms of protests because the majority of the Israeli public would like to see an end of war. In fact, the chief of staff, who now is going along with Netanyahu, had serious objections to the plan originally and said that the army cannot reoccupy Gaza City and the entire Gaza Strip because soldiers are burnt out and morale is very low, and soldiers are not keen to, they don't see the reason to be there because it's pretty clear to them that force is not going to bring the hostages back, and that is a lie that the government has been consistently uttering from day one. Proof is there that is clearly not the case.
Renard, if we look at this from Hamas's perspective, though, how much of a negotiating position do they still have? Because in nearly 2 years of conflict, they have lost thousands of their fighters. Their entire pre-war high command is dead. There are plausible reports that many Gazans have started to blame them, not unreasonably, for bringing this all down upon them. And even in recent weeks, we've even had the Arab League basically saying to them, guys, it's over, give up.
Yeah, I mean, Hamas has been decimated, as you say, at that top level. The question is who is even negotiating anymore for Hamas, and who wants to put themselves up because they're more likely will be targeted, along with so many in Gaza. So, from Hamas's perspective, from the Palestinian perspective, there has been, to some extent, a push for a ceasefire every now and then, but of course it's in these details and in how much to give up, and also a kind of skepticism of what Israel's end state actually is. Many believe that, this is a move to occupy Gaza and push out the Palestinians. So this is not, this is a very, very awful negotiation. And whoever is left of Hamas is, I think, at this moment, trying to survive.
I mean, Nomi, if you look at the current situation with your peace negotiators hat on, and I've spoken to people who've been involved in conflict resolution in many conflicts, and they often talk about that concept that Renard referred to earlier, the mutually hurting stalemate, i.e. when everybody recognises this is not doing any of us any good, there has to be a better way. But when that doesn't exist, it's that trying to find what is one thing we can agree on? What is something we can actually work with? Do you see anything like that in the current scenario in the Middle East? I mean, would you even know where to start from where we are right now?
Yes, I think I think the path to peace actually in ending the war is very clear. And I think that both sides know exactly what it is. The question really is how to get there, and so the path to ending the war entails an the implementation of the Arab League plan that was put on the table in January this year. It's a 3-year reconstruction plan. It calls for transitional Palestinian authority supported by the Gulf states principally, but then also in certain roles, Europe, and in the security role also the US. But the devil's always in the details, but the plan is is well known. The Palestinian Authority is going to have to appoint a transitional prime minister that is agreed upon all the 18 factions, and that shouldn't be very difficult to do, and the names are well known to all of us. The question really is, how do you get Israel to withdraw from Gaza, given that the current government and the current prime minister the current prime minister's goal has always been, from day one in office, to ensure that there's not going to be a Palestinian state. And that's so the fact that saying, he's held hostage to these messianic extremes is, he's not really held hostage to them. They are basically doing his job. It's much easier for him to hide behind them. He's the one that appointed them. He's the one that gave the very extreme Minister of Finance, Bezalel Smotrich, the powers to do whatever he likes in terms of settlements in the West Bank. He's the one that gave the very extreme Interior Minister Ben-Gvir, yes, the powers to do whatever he likes in prison and basically starve the Palestinian prisoners, humiliate them, and conditions are terrible in the prisons. Also, the hostages are held in absolutely dreadful conditions. So the way to get out of it is to sort of follow Renard's mission and to figure out who has leverage over US President Donald Trump. And that is the big question. It's not just who is dictating the policy. We know that US President Donald Trump has leverage over Netanyahu. Israel is existentially dependent on the US. So there's no question about the leverage there. The question is it Sheikh Tamim, the Emir of Qatar, that has leverage over Donald Trump? Is it Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, that has the leverage? Is it MBZ in the UAE? I mean, Trump is interested in money. He's very interested in making himself and his family wealthy. And the question really is, where's the leverage going to come from? And I think it's up to the Gulf states to exercise the leverage over Trump so as to ensure that he exercises the leverage over Netanyahu. And that's how it's going to end. Because if that cycle of pressure isn't full on, then you will see a full invasion of Gaza, and then that will be an absolute disaster. You could even see an implementation of this dreadful idea of Trump to quote unquote resettle, but basically ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip. So that is very worrying. A number of states have reportedly agreed to resettle Palestinians. That's terribly worried. Clearly they're paid huge amounts of money to do so. Otherwise they would have zero incentive in doing so. And South Sudan, Libya. I mean, these are very strange places, and the Palestinians, of course, will never go voluntarily.
Well, we will be returning later in the show to the difficulties of getting President Trump to do one thing rather than the other. But for the moment, let's look a little further north of Israel and Gaza and a possible recalibration of the balance of power in Lebanon. It is 47 years since the initial deployment of UNIFIL, the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon. The interim has been doing increasingly heavy lifting as the decades have ground on. UNIFIL currently comprises around 10,800 troops from 50-odd countries, the biggest contingent from Indonesia, its commanding officer an Italian Major General. The UN Security Council is debating a resolution on extending UNIFIL's mandate for another year, amid some gossip that the United States, which wields veto power on the UNSC, may pull UNIFIL's plugs. Renard, all peacekeeping missions are curious and they have their contradictions and their restrictions, but is UNIFIL more than others an embodiment of that joke often made about UN missions, that they're the equivalent of putting up a sign saying, please don't throw rocks at this sign?
Well, I think, especially in today's context, people did throw rocks, and Israel did attack UNIFIL after October 7th.
This is true, and not the first time.
Yes. So, there's that, the fact that, UNIFIL couldn't be that UN blue hat force that's there to kind of give the presence of order and stability. In fact, southern Lebanon has also been decimated. My friends across South Lebanon, some of them can't return to their homes yet. They are still displaced. And so what is the mandate of something like UNIFIL right now, when you have a very clear rejection of the UN, let alone UNIFIL by Israel, which is meant to be one of the key players in this. So, at the local level, I think de facto UNIFIL's mandate was removed primarily by Israel in the attacks that it had against Hezbollah. And second of that, in general, we are seeing, and I know, Nomi, you worked for a long time at the UN, but we're seeing the UN take a back seat in these types of peacekeeping efforts. We don't talk about the UN anymore when we talk about these states, these middle powers, like the Gulf states, the US. The UN is no longer in the room at times when peace settlements are being discussed.
Because, Naomi, another power in that region which has been ignoring UNIFIL is, of course, Hezbollah. There has been a Security Council resolution since 2006, this is 1701, which calls for the disarmament of Hezbollah. And obviously that was never enforced, least of all by UNIFIL. It's not actually an unreasonable question, despite the fact that it might be President Trump who's asking it. What are these people actually doing there?
Well, UNIFIL's mandate is complex because it's a Chapter 6 mandate. They don't actually have a Chapter 7 mandate. And also they have been very scared of Hezbollah, and Hezbollah mushroomed literally under their eyes. And that's why Israel objects to UNIFIL, because they did absolutely nothing to stop Hezbollah arming themselves under the noses. Their headquarters are in Nakura in South Lebanon, and from Nakura, now Israel has flattened southern Lebanon, but it was because there were so many tunnels and they stored ammunition like Hamas underneath children's bedrooms. So the question is, are you going to have a change of mandate to UNIFIL, and who is going to disarm Hezbollah? I mean, the Lebanese government has passed a resolution. They have an American plan for the disarmament of Hezbollah. They've been doing it discreetly, but it's all the Hezbollah members left their seats so as not to be sort of seen as complicit or, as agreeing to this resolution. But Israel has taken much of Hezbollah out in the same way that it has taken much of Hamas out. And for what has remained, the question really, who's going to do the job of disarming Hezbollah? And I fully agree with my friend and colleague Mansour. There is absolutely no way that UNIFIL is going to do it.
I mean, I haven't read any analysis, Renard, from anybody who thinks that, try as they might, the Lebanese army are capable of disarming Hezbollah either, especially if Hezbollah are really, really quite insistent on keeping their weapons, as they claim to be. Is there an argument, and Lord knows who you would find to volunteer for this, but is there an argument for some sort of international force, perhaps not UNIFIL, to assist the Lebanese military in doing that?
Well, the Lebanese army, the Lebanese armed forces have had significant training and funding and support by the UK, the US, other countries, but France and other European states. I mean, I think the question here is this an external problem that could be solved externally? The thing about Hezbollah is it has a base. It has a people there.
It does.
It as much as it's an armed group, as much as there is rejection to Hezbollah by Lebanese, it's not going away. And the question is, will it agree to give up its arms to the government? Well, who is the Lebanese government right now? It is academics and researchers, and as much as it pains me to say this, probably not going to be able to get that monopoly over violence. And the Lebanese armed forces, there were agreements between Hezbollah and the Lebanese army along the border. Of course, Lebanese army doesn't defend Lebanon from Israel or any other attacks, right? It was primarily focusing on Sunni sort of ISIS attacks when Syria was there. It's not a strong enough force. It's a foreign-funded, in a way, force, so that's been there. There are many Lebanese that wish and dream that they have a national army, but the sad reality is that the nature of the Lebanese state right now it's hard to see Hezbollah giving up their arms easily.
Just bringing this back finally to UNIFIL, Nomi, is there an argument that if the mission was wound up, then at worst things would not be actually any worse than they are now?
Well, I mean, the mission does do some, monitoring, which is relevant. And you used to have quite a useful monitoring, compliance, verification, dispute resolution mechanism, of which Israel was a part. And I think that we need to pick the bits that work and get rid of the bits that don't work. And I think having a monitoring, verification, compliance mechanism with teeth, actionable, is a very important part of the implementation of the ceasefire, both in Lebanon and in Gaza. Gaza ceasefire won't unless you get that sort of mechanism sitting with the head of the Egyptian security in Gaza. For the same reason, it won't work in Lebanon. Don't forget, you mentioned you were very negative on the Lebanese armed forces, but don't forget that the president of Lebanon is a former chief of staff of the Lebanese armed forces. So I wouldn't be as categorical. I think that the Lebanese armed forces, as Mansour has mentioned, has changed and evolved with Hezbollah's weakening. And I think it is strengthening, and I think it's going from strength to strength, and I think we need to build on it. And I think there is room for cautious optimism as long as the plans are in place. And I think that the plan is to strengthen the Lebanese armed forces and to get Hezbollah to give up its weapons. And as I said, there has been a fair amount of disarmament already. They're obviously having to do it very, very quietly and behind the scenes. But I think we have to build on the positives and I certainly see Lebanon, this is the best government Lebanon has had in certainly in my lifetime, and I think it's not just academics and sort of Eiffel Tower sort of people. You've got you've got the former Chief Justice of the International Court of Justice, as a Prime Minister. The people who know the law, who have experience in the international community, who have contacts with the outside world, and who can wield and make diplomacy work, coupled with a head of state as a president who is an army man. So, one needs to sort of look at the positives and see how to work with it. And I don't think UNIFIL is going to be completely wound up. No.
Well, to Washington, D.C. now, where a consensus appears to be forming that yesterday's meeting between US President Donald Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and a phalanx of European leaders went about as unbadly as might have been hoped. It certainly cleared the low bar set by Zelensky's previous visit to the White House in February, in which the Ukrainian president was baited by US Vice President J.D. Vance and heckled from the peanut gallery for wearing military fatigues instead of a suit, just like Winston Churchill did at the White House in 1942, though one could not expect minds of the calibre of Brian Glenn, reporter with Yahoo Network Real America's Voice, to know that, or indeed anything. A gratifying highlight of this week's visit was seeing Brian Glenn trying his luck with a professional comedian.
President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good.
I said to the one that attacked you last time. See, that was I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. You see, I changed. You are not.
Maybe yours is much better.
Renard, I think President Zelensky had been saving that one up for about 6 months. I did want to ask about what you made of the extraordinary spectacle, really, of that cohort of European leaders who scrambled at very short notice to be there as well. Was this basically a mass grovel? Is this what we've now understood about how to appeal to President Trump? Just trowel on the flattery?
I mean, there's that image from the Oval Office with, President Trump sat and the other, these big European leaders sat around his desk as if it's, students speaking to the teacher or to the boss. I think, President Trump is trying to take what's left of American power. I mean, for all this talk about the waning global, American, polarity and hegemony, there is still some power, economic primarily, but also military. And he's trying to use it as much as possible in this type of coercive way to get deals done. And of course, you've seen the head of NATO in a way, with the Daddy calling that episode. And I
had tried to scrub that from my mind, but thank you.
Sorry about that. But in general, also, there is this kind of thinking, the way to get to Trump is to offer him deals, economic deals, transactional deals. And what we know about this historically is they don't really lead to sustainable peace. So, the U.S. president can go to the Middle East and the Gulf and sign all of these economic deals, which he did. And within a month, one of the biggest wars in the Middle East erupted between Israel and Iran. We are living at a time when conflicts aren't decreasing, but increasing globally. They've doubled in the last 10 years, and that's probably going to continue. So for all of these world leaders who are in different ways telling President Trump he's on the verge of winning a Nobel Prize, what we know historically would suggest otherwise.
What did you make, Naomi, of President Zelensky's approach? Not just the fact that he did wear a suit, not the sort of full-blown suit and tie. It was the kind of thing you could just about imagine a special forces operative pulling off, but it was nonetheless recognisably a suit. But also that great theatre of presenting a letter from one first lady to the other, recognising, in fairness to Melania Trump, her apparent recent intercession over the fate of kidnapped Ukrainian children.
No, I think he learned his lesson. 6 months ago, he was himself. He was genuine. He was utterly shocked when, President Trump told him that he has no cards, and he genuinely said, I'm not playing a game of cards. And Trump said, yes, you are, and you don't have any. So, I think he said, okay, he was advised to play by Trump's rules because he and his country need the US to back him up. So he was extremely cautious in what he said. He was flattering to Trump. He played the same game that his wife, who's a wonderful woman, gave a letter to Melania Trump. And I think he was playing by the US rules, which is what they were all doing. All the Europeans were full of flattery to President Trump because they know they can't get anywhere with him if there is no flattery, and he only responds well to flattery. He also said that he was very good friends with everyone except for the Finnish Prime Minister, because he didn't know the Finnish Prime Minister, so it was very obvious that he didn't know. He had to look around and sort of, oh, who's that? Oh, yes, oh, Alex, would you like to say something? He said at the very end. And of course, Alex has a very long border with Russia, and his country has,
He's also played golf with Trump reasonably recently. Clearly didn't make much of an impression.
Well, I don't know. I'm not here to question Trump's mental state and memory, but it's very clear that he has a memory issue and that he doesn't remember from 1 minute to the next what he said. He also said yesterday that this is his last conflict. I mean, what about Gaza? He said, there's the only conflict that is left is this one. So does that mean he's given up on Gaza, or he's forgotten Gaza, or is there a third option?
I just wanted to follow up on that, Naomi, reflecting again on your own experience in negotiations, and I'm sure dealing with some fairly difficult and tempestuous people who may be motivated by things like vanity and ego, as many politicians are. How often is it necessary to actually just bite your tongue before uttering the most preposterous unctions to somebody to try and make them feel good? How important a diplomatic tool is flattery?
Well, I think the diplomatic tool that's important is understanding the other. It's not always flattery that the other needs. In President Trump's case, it's flattery, but it's really about understanding the narrative of the other, not necessarily agreeing with the narrative, but understanding it, reaching out to it. And the same with the mindset, is trying to work out when you're negotiating is who are you negotiating with? And the more you know about that person and that country's mindset, the better. So in Trump's case, it's flattery that is key, but that's not true for most leaders. I mean, everyone, some people just, if you with small talk and flattery, they would think, oh, what are they playing at? I think that would be the reaction of most seriously. If you tried it with a Finnish, and they're the most direct negotiators in the world, they would not take kindly to flattery.
And just finally on this one, you mentioned the thing that Trump apparently wants more than anything else in the world, Renard. How many times in that short meeting do you think that cohort of European leaders uttered the phrase Nobel Peace Prize?
Oh, I think that's in everyone's notes. Mention it. You've seen so many world leaders. It's the Peace Prize. It's agreeing to buy American weapons and attract American investment. That's what he's looking for. And, as Nomi says, that's what I think they're trying to do to negotiate to get to him.
Well, on a screeching handbrake turn now, dispiriting news for any listeners tuning into the Daily while in a state of cosy domesticity with someone they met on a dating app. You're doomed. Or at the very least, kidding yourselves. These, at least, are the conclusions of boffins from the University of Wrocław, whose research has led them to believe that those who meet their partners online are less happy than those who struck up acquaintance more organically. These findings do, of course, have to be adjusted for the possibility that this so-called report is the vindictive spite of nerds and weirdos who nobody wishes to accompany to the comic book shop. Nomi, are you buying this? Does this sound plausible?
Well, I mean, we are in a different era today. I mean, Renard and I were talking about it just as we were coming in. We didn't do any internet dating. And, this isn't sort of, we're not sure we're the best people to comment on it, and we were just, we so believe in our work, in trying to sort of unpack what is going on, in the world and try to make progress towards ending wars, reaching understandings and eventually and ultimately, having, genuine security and peace in the broadest sense of the terms, then, dating doesn't sort of appeal to us at all. But that said, online dating. I mean, you're sitting, I can't even stand Zoom, half the meetings today, it's like, you see all these leaders, also European leaders. Thank goodness they sat in the Oval Office yesterday. But other than that, you just see them on a screen, and then and everything is so theatrical. And on online, and you're missing the personal touch, and you're missing that feeling, and that feeling that cannot be the same when you're dating online and when you're actually in a beautiful restaurant or in watching a beautiful sunset or just being in a noisy street and, sort of feeling the vibe of the environment. Nature has a very important role to play. The environment has a very role to play. We are between our minds, our hearts, our souls, our bodies and the environment. Computers are not exactly the best way to communicate. Yes, they assist. And today people have dates that are AI. They have girlfriends, boyfriends, and they're not even people. And that is a fact. And we're moving in that direction where machine learning is the way ahead. And soon we won't have control over it. So at all. So, if that's the future of relationships, then yes, that is very troubling indeed.
I mean, what I was struck by, Renard's, well, again, let's remove my own somewhat sceptical belief that trying to measure the relative happiness of other people's relationships is a more or less colossal waste of everybody's time. But they think that the people who met online, which is fundamentally a box-ticking exercise, i.e. I like these things, you therefore get matched with someone who likes the same things. It turns out that those people actually have less in common than those people who met in a more organic fashion.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. I was kind of hoping that we had gotten over even how weird it was to say, people met on dating apps. Now you have children whose parents met on dating apps, and it's been part of our lives for several years now. So I was kind of hoping it was helping people. Yeah, I mean, how you represent yourself online could be different than how you represent yourself in person. I know, as Nomi is saying, also now you have people using AI to chat with each other and asking AI, what should I say, and that. So yeah, I would say I'm very disappointed in these studies. I would question who is behind them. And I think that people who have met on dating apps should not worry and should get to know each other just as.
Yeah, I would want to say that I know a lot of people, including relatives of mine, that met online and they are very happy together. So
well, that's what they're telling you.
They don't know each other.
Yes, the internet, a ghastly mistake in my view. Nomi Bar-Yaakov and Renard Mansour, thank you both for joining us. Finally, on today's show, every city has or should have the kind of old-school hole-in-the-wall dining institution that becomes something of a stalwart precisely because it is so humble, as well as obviously delicious. The nostalgia factor ramps up in the case of restaurants that refuse to take card payments, can only be booked over the phone or not at all, and allow punters to bring their own booze. That is exactly what Singburi, a beloved family-run Thai restaurant in God's own East London suburb of Leytonstone, used to be like. But when the older generation of the Kulabongs decided it was time to retire, their son Sirchai decided to refresh Singburi with a move to the more central neighbourhood of Shoreditch. Joined by two friends, Nick Moliviatis and Alexander Gikas. He now runs the restaurant as Singburi 2.0. Monocle's Chiara Romello was joined by Sirichai and Nick in the studio to discuss how great restaurants can be reborn and why change is sometimes inevitable.
The whole idea of Singburi 2.0, not in this capacity, started 4 years ago. Like, I was working for a big operator, and Siri was consulting at the time. Like, I brought him in because Siri has been, I know him for years. And he came and he did some development, and we worked together, and I was tasked by my boss at the time, let's not name them, but very big operator in London, and worldwide actually right now. And they told me, why don't you see if Siri wants to do something with us as the next thing? I said, okay. I had a chat with Siri, one of our friends, hi Feroz, and we said, okay, let's say this happens. How can we make this happen? What needs to happen to the current restaurant? Because the first conversation I had with Siri about this, he said, well, my parents need to rest at some time, because they were the restaurant. It
was a family
The
thing.
three of them were the restaurant, and everybody was joining them to work there 4 days a week at the time, right?
Yeah, we're just a very small restaurant.
Yeah. His parents needed to rest. He needed to do, how can he do things on his own?
I was looking for the next step.
Next step. Yeah. And the plan was in motion from back then. What are the actions needed to happen?
Yeah.
That collaboration never worked out, but that idea somehow lingered.
I'm interested in the decision to go for this type of format, though, for this iteration, for this 2.0, in the sense that plenty of eulogies have been written about Singburi 1,
Yeah.
and it's
And it will be
obviously
written.
and it's obviously a very emotional thing.
Yeah.
But it's telling that you have chosen a certain kind of site, a certain kind of freshness, a new team to do this, because you could have gone a myriad different directions. How do you find this type of setup makes you feel? Do you find it freeing? Do you feel like you needed a big change in order to, shake it up psychologically and emotionally also? How does the big difference work for you in terms of approaching this? Because there is continuity, but there is also newness. There needs to be newness, right?
Absolutely. I do find it is a very jarring environment. Everything, it's still taking me time to get used to it, because before it was a closed kitchen. I was pretty much working by myself. Now it's open plan. There's a whole team looking to me. I have Nick and I have Alex, as my de facto parents, as it were.
I'm the dad.
Yeah, he is the daddy.
The agent dad is very, very stern.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, like I said, everyone who knows me, they've known it's taken me quite a while. Naturally, I'm a very introverted individual. So this whole entire limelight is very kind of unnerving, I guess. But the thing is that I also like to say that, this is a team. It's not just, what I don't like is, I think everyone focusing, it's Singburi, etc. It's not just me. It's me, Nick, Alex. It's always been a group thing, and I don't want that kind of focus to be naturally just the one individual. It's all of us. Now, it's a new thing, and that's, it takes a while to get used to, I guess.
I think that you can perceive that sense of groupness when you go to the restaurant, actually, because everyone who's there is very gregarious. Everyone is really invested in the project as well. I feel like Singburi 1 was loved by so many that the people who work there now are the people who loved going, perhaps, and they've sort of all gravitated around it in the past. I suppose, how would you describe when a restaurant becomes like this totemic? When you reincarnate, what kind of people do you draw together? How do you create this new community around something that becomes so symbolic in its own way?
So the only lines we drew in the beginning was, if we're going to use Singburi name, so Siri took care of all, I had zero opinion about how things feel, how things look, in terms of what the decor and the colors and everything. I only cared about what was being operational, for the staff, for the people when they're moving, how the food comes out, which way, do we serve from the right, do we serve from the left? We run food to the tables. And Alex took care of all the service aspect. So even if we moved brick by brick the whole restaurant to a new place, everybody would say it's on the same. We knew that from the beginning. It was the task we gave to our branding experts, everything in between. Like, that comment will always be there, no matter what you do. So if people actually, pay some attention, they would see the tables are actually matching the color of the walls. Every material has been used, has been selected to invoke a memory, actually not for the rest, but for Siri. Like it's Siri grew up in that place.
Yeah, I think that psychologically is really interesting because people have this desire for things to stay exactly the same.
Yes. Yeah.
But when you look at their own life, our own life, a new generation's life, who would want to do exactly the same as our parents did? The people who are going are sort of living in this bubble where this applies to them, but not me, right? So why do you think that people have this desire for things to stay exactly the same? And what do you think that kind of Singbury one represented for them? I feel like people were just attached to sort of a London that no longer exists, which is a London where you could go and pay only cash and you didn't have to book everything in advance. Yeah, is it like a psychological hankering for a London that no longer exists?
Well, and for many things, it was like that romanticism, modern pop diner. You turn up, it's a quiet place, it's tiny, and then you get this great food. I mean, nowadays it's all very, I guess, corporate, very smooth. And, this is a place with its little foibles. It's personal, I guess. In fact, it's mum and dad. They'll come up to you, talk to you, see, how are you doing? Fine, great. Okay, I'm going to go at the back and do some cooking, give you some food, that kind of stuff. I think is that. So previous site was, 25 years? And so we've been open, how long? 2 months. So in a sense, you are witnessing the tumultuous, birth, because we're still figuring out things. We're still Singbury, but it's like we're growing up. We're still finding out the nooks and crannies, and then we can settle into who we are going to be. That's always going to be the challenge. So, like I said, carrying on with the whole entire thing about, people are going to be like, they're not like that. Yeah, well, of course we're not, obviously. So they have to give us time and some patience as well. But obviously we're still, slinging out some good food as well. But as to the environment, as to who we are, we're still figuring it out, I think.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part, I think, for any of the guests who come in.
Chiara Ramella with that report on the rebirth of Singbury. And that is all for this edition of the Monocle Daily. Thanks to our panellists today, Nomi Bar-Yakov and Renard Mansour. Today's show was produced by Monica Lillis and our sound engineer was Steph Chungu. I'm Andrew Muller here in London. The Daily is back at the same time tomorrow from our Zurich studios. Thanks for listening.